Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, September 8th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Arkansas State game is in 2 days, the game against Michigan in 79 days. We're here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, just wrapped up our midweek player interviews, got to talk to a whole bunch of Buckeyes. I guess, not surprisingly, a good bit of the conversation was still about the Notre Dame game rather than the Arkansas State game. We'll probably touch a little bit on both of those today. My guest today is Tony Gerdeman. He was just the closest person when we're like, we should do a show. And I was like, oh, well, here's Tony, so here he is. Tony, thanks for being here.
Good catch. You know, I was almost out the door, and you were like, hey, and I knew that if I didn't do it now, I'd have to do it later or some other day. So it's like, you know what, let's just pay the bills on the first of the month, get everything done, and then move on.
So I didn't need to horse collar you? I shouldn't have wasted that 15 yards? No? Okay, well, that's all right. We, as I mentioned, talked a whole bunch about that Notre Dame game. One of the real impact players in that Notre Dame game was defensive tackle Michael Hall. We did not talk to Mike Hall tonight, but we talked about Mike Hall quite a bit. And there were 3 defensive players who all came out and talked, and all 3 of them threw out the same comp, which, Tony, it's a name I think people are going to know.
Yeah, the name is Aaron Donald, NFL All-Pro, future Hall of Famer, defensive tackle of the Rams.
Correct.
And one of the routinely every year one of the top 3 defensive players in the NFL, and known for his quickness and power and inability to be stopped. And so there was quite a bit of those comps. And I'll tell you, Donovan Jackson even shared some things about it, that what makes him so difficult is, you know, he's fast, so you've got to step back and be prepared for it. But if you step back too much and you prepare for it and you get a base, then he's just going to run you over. So that's what makes him very difficult. Like other guys, you can know, like, well, they really only do this. Like with Mike Hall, what makes him dangerous is like he can do whatever, and for an offensive lineman, you're guessing too much and you're putting in bad situations.
Yeah, JT Tuimoloau said he's been doing that all year. Mike Hall's just been doing that all year. This is what he's been working for. So that may have come as a surprise to some Ohio State fans, to Ohio State players. It was like, no, we've been watching him do that all year. Why? Have you not? Were you not at practice? Oh, okay. Zach Harrison said Mike Hall, just a special player. Said not everyone can do that, and he's starting to realize that and getting confidence. And the other thing is that he has explosiveness like wide receivers. You know, it's that quick burst. We've talked about that with Tyleik Williams. But, you know, if Mike Hall's kind of doing the same thing, you know, the interior of the defensive line might be in okay shape for the next 2 years.
Well, and we saw there were several times where Mike Hall was lined up like alongside of the left to right tackle on the offensive line, or outside of the tackle, like as a defensive end, basically, in a 3-down lineman look with the jack, you know, going wherever he wanted to. But I mean, when you've got a 300-pounder that can line up outside, like I remember Jim Tressel used to put Jonathan Hankins out wide, like as a strong side edge, just to don't let anything like go past you. Whereas they put Mike Hall out there and they're like, go get the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the other side of the ball, had some interesting stuff on the offensive line as well. You mentioned talking to Donovan Jackson. Got to talk to Matt Jones a little bit. Jones talked about the fact that during the course of last week, the offensive line, you know, the offensive line heard all the stuff that everyone was saying about them, but they weren't tough enough, they couldn't run the ball and all that stuff. They all heard that, and they really wanted to kind of establish that, yes, in fact, it is a new year, it is a new offensive line, it is, you know, they can in fact run it. And, you know, he said they kind of proved to Ryan Day through the course of the year, or the week, that yes, they deserved his confidence, and they had earned his confidence. And then during the week, you know, during the game even, they said, you know, just put it on our back. Let us do it. And it was basically, there were a couple throws from C.J. Stroud, but it was really mostly runs in that 95-yard game-clinching drive against Notre Dame. That was, you know, I think that was a big thing for the offense, a big thing for the offensive line in particular. There was a lot of talk about confidence tonight. There was a lot of talk about confidence. There was a lot of talk about trust. I think there was, you know, confidence was a lot with the offensive line, trust a lot on the defense. You heard Zach Harrison, you heard JT Tuimoloau just talking about how much they trust in Jim Knowles, and they know, you know, there's not a question. They sort of trust in themselves because they've been drilling this stuff all year, but they also trust in Jim Knowles that when he sends in a play call, they're going to be in the right thing, and they just got to go execute.
Yeah, and they saw the results. I think they saw the results all throughout practice as well, because it's not like you're going against a bunch of schlubs. Like, this is the Ohio State offense you're going against. But Cam Brown, cornerback, was asked, Cam, what's different about this defense that puts you in better situations than maybe last year? And Cam's answer was like, I see what you're trying to do. But then he went into talking about the confidence that everybody has and the way it helps them play.
Good for him not jumping on the interview equivalent of an out and up. That was a savvy veteran play from Cam Brown there. Zach Harrison talked about how this year's defense, they can just play fast, free, and physical, and that's what you need on defense. He said they built up confidence in fall camp, and they know at this point, they know they're good, and one play isn't going to beat them. Because one of the big questions was, first play from scrimmage, Lorenzo Styles goes 54 yards or whatever it was. How did you guys keep that from spiraling? And it sounds like there's a real difference just in terms of mentality and maybe confidence. Again, this probably goes back to confidence from this year's defense to last year's defense.
Yeah, I was just looking at my quote from Zach Harrison talking about that play, the first play of the game. He said last year he would have folded. Like, on that play, it would have folded, would have given up a touchdown. It would have affected them. And then to watch Zach Harrison do something similar that Cam Brown did, I asked Zach Harrison, kind of in that vein, when you watch the film from the Saturday night's game, do you see plays where you see the defense makes a stop, but last year would have been, that would have been 6 last year. Like, are you comparing it all, what you're doing this year, with what you've been doing, what would have happened last year? And then, 60 seconds after talking about last year, he then tells me, after I ask that question, we don't look back on last year. Last year's gone. We don't worry about that. We don't talk about it.
Not anymore. I mean,
not since the last. Starting
time.
now.
Yes, start right now. Yeah. Matt Jones, enough looking back, I guess. So let's, in that spirit, move forward to the Arkansas State game. There are a couple guys who you're kind of not sure about in terms of health. We talked a bunch about those guys on yesterday's show. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Julian Fleming, Luke Whippler. Those guys are all kind of a little bit of a question mark to some degree or another, whether they're going to play this week.
Cam Babb still had a knee brace on.
Yeah, Cam Babb. And, Cam Babb didn't actually play last week. And, he was not listed on the availability report, but Emeka Egbuka, we'll get to that in a minute, Emeka Egbuka, mentioned that, going into the game, they knew they weren't going to have Cam, and then they didn't have Jackson Smith-Njigba, and it was like, whoa. You knew you weren't going to have Cam Babb because he wasn't on the availability report, but that's neither here nor there. The question moving forward is Luke Whippler going to play this weekend? Because Luke Whippler, he left the stadium in a little bit of a walking boot last week. I think my assumption is no. Matt Jones said he has been working a little bit at center this week. He's very comfortable at center. He said he's comfortable and confident at left guard, center, right guard, wherever they need him, he's fine. He was asked, are you expecting to start? He's like, I don't know. It's impossible to say whether he would start this week or not. I will put a shiny nickel on Matt Jones as the starting center. Would you like to take the other side of that bet?
No, I would not. And speaking of Matt Jones, went into the game with like 102.5 fever, 102.5 fever. I just said that, Tom. But he was getting IVs like prior to the game, trying to get ready. And like before the game, Justin Fryer was like, Matt, what are you doing? Can you do this? He's like, I got you, coach. And he was out there until like the very end. And just to tell you a little bit about and I think as Donovan Jackson said, the warrior that Matt Jones is. And, then now this week he's probably playing a different position, and next week he may be playing left tackle. Who knows? And
that isn't necessarily they're worried about the guy behind him, because he talked a bunch about Enoch Vamahi and how, when Jones went out at one point late in the game, Vamahi came in and just, stepped in on that last drive. He, very confident in him stepping in. He said, they call him Knock. Said he's always ready to go, very confident in him stepping in if he needs to start. That could presumably be this week if Matt Jones is moving over to center. So you may see Knock at center this week. Ronnie Hickman, also just going through my notes here, Ronnie Hickman also talked about bouncing back from that early play. Just said it's next man up, next play, whatever it is, you just got to bounce back. You don't really have a choice there. Donovan Jackson talking about the early sack in that same vein. Gave up an early sack. He said, college football isn't high school football. You just need to shrug it off and then, and on to the next play after a mistake.
Very astute observation on Donnie's part to make that. And yes, it's first start, first couple of plays in that start, and but he bounced back very well and was strong throughout after that. And it's a learning. He certainly learned from it, and I would expect him to just continue to be just fine.
And finally, Emeka Egbuka. Yes, it is Egbuka. The G is silent. I asked someone, did he just change that, or has everyone been saying it wrong for a while? And apparently people are sort of just realizing everyone's been saying it wrong for 2 years or so.
Well, do you remember Devon Hamilton in his 5th year was like, well, actually there's an apostrophe after the A, and it's Davon or it's Devon, if you don't let us know, we don't always know. In that vein, Tom, G's being silent, my last name, also you've been saying it wrong this entire time. The G in my last name is also silent.
Is it French? Gerdeman.
No, it's Australian.
Oh, no, I can't do an Australian accent, so I can't help you there.
I know you can't.
The Emeka Egbuka talked about being in the slot. The difference, how is it different being in the slot as opposed to being one of the outside receivers? Said you've got to get your depth and then you've got to get your speed off the ball. Said one of the other big differences is you end up blocking bigger guys. You're blocking linebackers sometimes. You're going up against linebackers in coverage, but sometimes you got to block linebackers as well in that run game. He said they would love to have Jackson Smith-Njigba last week, this week. They said honestly it doesn't change much because they've got confidence in all their guys. We'll see where that wide receiver unit is. Do they have Jackson Smith-Njigba? I'd bet probably not. Right. Do they have Julian Fleming? I'd say that's maybe. And do they have Cam Babb back? We don't know that. But, there are plenty of other guys. This feels like a week when you're probably going to see some younger receivers get a chance to really finally shine.
And you'll also, Emeka will have an entire week of practicing in the slot, I'm guessing, or whoever that person is. They won't just learn it in the second quarter where it's like, all right, now you got to go in. This is your position now. So he's had all week to work on it, and I think that will help the timing and all of those issues that we saw on Saturday.
And he will also be presumably the starting punt returner. He talked a little bit about, the punt game from Notre Dame was a little weird. He said the first 2 were really short, so they're kind of like moving up. And then the third one was just an absolute cannon shot over his head. And he just said, whatever, man. Whatever. I go where the coaches tell me to go, and it's fine. There's only so much you can do when you have 32-yard punts and then a 52-yard punt. Be more consistent. I don't know if you can taunt the opponent like that or not. But we will, speaking of taunting, we have a bold prediction show coming up on Thursday on the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed. That's always a lot of fun. Tony and I will. Okay, well, it sounds like Tony has scored the prediction contest.
No,
from us.
I have not.
Okay.
I have no fun on that show. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Well, one of us has fun on that show. One of us also wins. Is there a correlation? Listen, I don't know. You'll have to tune in to find out. That is Thursday on the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed. You'll also be able to find that on YouTube. We finally have our branded YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. So instead of me sitting there and trying to go B6, capital G, lowercase z, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Now you have no excuses. youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Just type that in, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to get notified. That will make it so much easier for you to find out when we're doing our live pregame shows, live postgame shows. We did a bunch of live interviews on Wednesday night. Lots of great stuff there. We will have lots of content, of course, podcasts. Kevin Noon's Big Me Kickoff podcast. We generally do a live show on Friday afternoons, answering your questions, previewing the weekend of games, and all that kind of good stuff. It's all at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And in a stunning coincidence, BuckeyeHuddle.com, it's actually the same name as the end of the YouTube thing, BuckeyeHuddle.com. It is where you can find our work. We actually write a bunch. Well, not me, but Tony and Kevin do. Mark Ivler does. Alex Gleitman does. Ross Fulton just had a great X's and O's piece, planning on having Ross on the morning show probably tomorrow to go through some of that. But lots of really great stuff there. Our Huddle board, which is members only, really, really active, really fun community. Lots of really good threads this week. As I'm starting to get the sense that people are a little bit excited about Ohio State football this year. If you were excited about Ohio State football, a great place to share that excitement and be around other folks who are excited is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.